Recorded live in the Fantasmo Lounge, high atop the Buck Cartillion building in beautiful Midtown Portsmouth, Virginia. It's Fantasmo After Dark, with your host, Rob Floyd. Tonight's topic, werewolves. Well, hey everybody. Welcome back to the old podcast. Thanks for joining me in the lounge tonight. Just me and you tonight, no co-host, and we're going to talk about a subject that's near and dear to my heart and always has been, werewolves. Werewolf movies in particular. And we'll go to a little pop culture, too. Not going to talk about werewolf folklore. Maybe a little bit, I don't know. We just got back from MarsCon last weekend, where we did a few panels on werewolves, folklore, and werewolf movies, and Lon Chaney's history of film career and all. It was a lot of fun. Had a good time. Always a good, relaxing convention if you get a chance to go. Williamsburg, Virginia, MarsCon in January. But tonight, it's werewolves. And some of my favorite werewolf movies, or, you know, some that I feel are real important to werewolves and history of werewolves in movies, anyway. And let's jump right in, shall we? We're going to start with talkies. There were a couple of werewolf movies, actually, silent films, that I don't think are even in existence anymore. And one of them I know dealt with, like, Indian werewolf legends, and I don't know if there was a transformation, but it was the person turned into an actual wolf. Kind of like American Wolf in London. I kind of prefer the wolf man, walking on two legs look myself. Which brings us right to The Werewolf of London with Henry Hull, the first talkie werewolf movie, 1935. If you haven't seen this one, definitely need to give it a shot. It's kind of fun. It's a little, I don't want to say slow, it's a little stiff in parts. It plays kind of like a stage play. I mean, it was 1935, you know. But the werewolf makeup is really kind of cool. Jack Pierce did the makeup for this one, and it's really minimalistic makeup, but it's really stylized and really kind of cool looking. But the reason for that, there's two thoughts on this, two rumors that have been around for years, and one is Henry Hull's vanity. He didn't want his face to be completely covered. He wanted people to recognize him in the movie, throughout the movie, and you can. Another reason was the studio executives felt that the makeup was a little too intense and gruesome for the time. I mean, you know, but Frankenstein had come out in 31, Dracula in 31. This was 35. Phantom of the Opera, the silent movie, which is a horrific makeup. The original Chaney makeup, beautiful, but horrific. But they felt a fully realized, covered in hair werewolf makeup would have been too much. So that's two thoughts on it. I'm kind of glad they went the way they did, because it is really kind of cool looking and iconic now at this point. Check the Facebook page while you're listening to this, and I'll try to post. There are pictures out there of the original makeup design that Pierce did for Werewolf of London, and I'll put a picture of that up on the page. Yeah, a couple of interesting things about this film, though, that you don't see in a lot of other werewolf movies. One, when he's the werewolf, he seems to be a little more conscious of being who he was, because he goes out at night, he puts on his top coat and his driving cap and is looking stylish, and towards the end he speaks. There's only one other werewolf movie, especially, you know, from the classic era I can think of. It's not really a werewolf movie, but a werewolf is in it, Return of the Vampire, where the werewolf speaks, but that's a whole different thing. This movie is very easy to find. It's still in print, part of the Universal collection, I believe. The Legacy collection, you can get it. And it is one of my favorites because it is unique and different. But that brings us to my all-time favorite, The Wolfman, 1941, Lon Chaney Jr., usually regarded as being the first werewolf movie. Most people think of it as the first werewolf movie. And it's a fantastic film. A lot of things that people think of as werewolf folklore actually were made up for this film by the writer, Kurt Siodmak, like the silver bullets, changing during the full moon, being bitten by a werewolf, curses you to become a werewolf. None of that stuff was really in folklore, but Kurt Siodmak wrote it down and it became folklore after that. And the poem, even a man who is pure at heart and says his prayers at night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. That's not an ancient gypsy poem. That came right out of Kurt Siodmak's brain. But it's really cool, though. This movie has everything. You know, you've got a great-looking werewolf, beautiful makeup by Jack Pierce. You got, you know, it's a Greek tragedy, really. I mean, it follows I think it's called Hamartia, where the lead protagonist is cursed or doomed through doing a good deed, through no fault of his own. By doing this good deed, he succumbs to some tragedy. And that's what happens. Larry Talbot, Chaney Jr., tries to save a girl who's being attacked by a werewolf, and in doing this, he gets bitten, and he's cursed and has to deal with being a werewolf and committing atrocities after that. It's really a beautifully shot film. If you love Chaney, this is the Chaney film. And I could do a whole other podcast just talking about Chaney's films and his work. He's one of my favorite of the classic Universal guys. I mean, I love them all, but I don't think Chaney gets enough recognition, enough love. He gets passed over a lot. People talk about Karloff, people talk about Lugosi, and then they jump right into Vincent Price and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, I love those guys. They're fantastic. They're great. I'll watch any one of them in anything. But I got a soft spot for Chaney, and I'll watch him in anything also, and over again. This movie had an incredible cast, too. You've got Chaney Jr., Maria Alspinskaya, Bela Lugosi in a small part, Ralph Bellamy, Claude Rains, just fantastic cast. And it's a nice little story. It moves along at a good pace. It doesn't have any slow spots in it. And, of course, you get the silver-handled Wolfman Kane, one of the coolest props in horror movie history ever. One interesting thing about this, too, is, or I should say another interesting thing about this, is Chaney was the only one to ever play the Wolfman in any Universal monster movie. How is it, like 5 sequels he did? 4? And he's also the only guy to play all the other monsters. I mean, Karloff played Frankenstein, he played the Mummy. Lugosi played Dracula, he played Frankenstein. But none of them played the Wolfman. Chaney played the Wolfman, he played the Mummy, he played Frankenstein, he played Dracula. If the Creature from Black Lagoon was done back then instead of in the 50s, he probably would have played the creature too. Would have been a big damn creature, but anyway. I could keep talking about the Wolfman for a long time too, but we're going to try to cover quite a few films here, try to squeeze them all in, and hopefully, maybe we'll come across one that you haven't seen, and it'll prompt you to go check it out, because these are really fun films, most of them. After the Wolfman, I believe the next film we come to is The Werewolf, 1956. And this is a neat film. This is I think Sam Katzman produced this one. It's different from the supernatural werewolf that we're used to by this point. The atomic 50s, where everything has to do with science and scientific means create everything. And that's no different from this werewolf. Stephen Rich was the actor who played the werewolf. He does a good job as being the tortured soul who's in this situation and through no fault of his own doesn't want to be. And it almost opens up kind of like a noir type film at the beginning. He's wandering into this town and he doesn't know who he is. He has amnesia, goes into this bar. This guy in the bar sees he has a roll of money, and when he walks out, the guy tries to mug him. When he goes in this alley and you hear all this noise and then growling, and of course a lady walks by, looks down the alley and screams. And then we have a movie. What happens to this guy? He doesn't get bit by a werewolf. He's not cursed by a gypsy curse or anything, but he apparently got in a car accident. The backstory, he got in a car accident and makes his way to this doctor's house, and the doctor takes care of him and patches him up, and also injects him with this serum, this experimental serum he's been working on to cause people to revert to their bestial nature so they'll be able to survive the upcoming either atomic war or downfall of mankind. I need to watch this one again. It's a quick film. It's not very long, but it is a lot of fun. And the werewolf looks kind of cool. It's a nice little makeup. Again, pulling from the Chaney makeup, the Jack Pierce makeup a little bit. And he's looking good. He's wearing a suit and tie and a real sharp-dressed werewolf. Easy to find. I think this came in a box set of DVDs of Sam Katzman films. It's on a double disc with Zombies Immortal, which I've yet to watch. I really need to. That one's come up a lot in conversation with people and in pop culture. But this one's another one. I say especially this one probably go right along with if you really dig the 50s atomic movies, the giant monster, giant bug movies, and the teenage monster movies. This kind of fits in with by honorable mention with those. And speaking of teenage monster movies, we'll jump right into I Was a Teenage Werewolf with Michael Landon. This one, this was a lot of fun. I love the teenage monster movies, Teenage Frankenstein, Blood of Dracula. I think I did a podcast on the teenage monster movies a while back, I believe. So we'll just go over this one real quick. Again, Michael Landon as the troubled youth, Tony in this, who is gets in trouble, gets in fights all the time. So the school principal and his dad send him to a psychologist to try to help him. And of course, the psychologist also just happens to be a scientist working on an experimental serum. And again, to regress people back. And through hypnosis and through this serum, he does cause him to regress to a bestial nature. And apparently we evolved from wolves out on the plains instead of, gorillas and stuff. So, sorry, Planet Apes. We apparently this guy found out we actually evolved from wolves, which would explain a lot of things in my case. But so he doesn't need a full moon to change. He's got the serum in him. It's like it's the Hulk or something. Whenever he gets angry or kind of hears a loud noise or gets startled, he turns into a werewolf. And the first scene, I believe it's the first one where he changes. Anyway, where the classic scene where he's in the gym and the girl's doing the gymnastics and he's kind of spying on her, and the bell goes off right above his head. And he just loses his mind and starts turning into a werewolf. It's really a neat little scene. And most of the time, whenever you see any clips from this movie, that's kind of the scene they'll show. And this is another one, like the Stephen Rich one, where it doesn't take a silver bullet to stop this werewolf. It just takes, a well-placed bullet or a lot of bullets. So the supernatural aspect is out the window here, but it's still a lot of fun. And if you want to go, this one, I didn't talk about the sequels to the Chaney film, the original Wolfman, where he did play the Wolfman in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, and in House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, and then again in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which wasn't really a sequel. It's kind of a standalone film outside the continuity, the loose continuity of the Universal monsters. But it does mark the second only time where Lugosi played Dracula on screen. So and that's a lot of fun. The makeup changed a bit, because it wasn't Pierce doing Chaney's makeup at this point. It was Jack Keevan. And I'm not really a fan. The nose looks a little weird to me. It still looks good, but it's not as smooth as the Pierce makeup. But getting back to I Was a Teenage Werewolf, there wasn't really a sequel, but if you could kind of say it's a sequel, loosely. How to Make a Monster is another one from the teenage monster movie craze, where it has the makeup, and they call him the teenage werewolf. And it's supposed to be these guys are making a movie, Teenage Werewolf versus Teenage Frankenstein. And Michael Landon's not in this one, but Gary Lockwood that played Teenage Frankenstein, I think. Anyway, he's playing the Teenage Frankenstein again. And in this one, the makeup man, it's almost kind of a tribute to Pierce, the way he kind of got ousted by Universal, which was kind of sucked. The makeup man has been working on this special makeup that will absorb through the pores in the skin and cause the subject to be real subjective to suggestion. And he can basically control them, and whoever's wearing this makeup will do what he says. And of course the makeup man goes crazy because he gets fired from the studio because they want to stop making monster pictures and want to make musicals, so he sends his monsters out after the studio executives, which, isn't a bad thing, actually, come to think of it. But, it really has nothing to do with Teenage Werewolf as a story, other than it has the makeup in the name. I say over and over, I dig this era of movies, the Atomic 50s. They're really kitschy and simple plot-wise, but they're a lot of fun, and there's really not a lot of extra, bullshit in them as far as just dragging stuff on and loose plot lines and just drama for no reason. It's just boom, boom, story, boom, action, monster, done. This was, except for maybe, like I said, Return of the Vampire, which is a bit earlier, still in the 40s, I think, where you had the werewolf. After that, we didn't have one for a while until the 60s with Curse of the Werewolf, the only Hammer entry into werewolf films. And this is a beautiful film. This is one a ton of people like. And it's really kind of odd because the werewolf's not really in it that much. But I can't say anything bad about it because I love the film too. The look, the Roy Ashton makeup on Oliver Reed is beautiful. And it's different than anything we've seen before this. You've got the ripped shirt open, so you see a lot of the werewolf arms and chest, and the head with the ears put more on top of the head, looking more like an actual wolf, but still the Wolfman look to the face and everything. The heavy brow, and it's a beautiful look, and with that kind of frilly shirt and the black pants and the red sash and the black boots. stylish. Takes werewolf style to a level that Henry Hull couldn't even think of. Now, this one delves into a little bit of folklore as far as how he became a werewolf. His mother was raped by an insane beggar in a jail, in a dungeon, and then she has the baby like on Christmas Day, and supposedly that is a abomination in folklore, and if you're born on Christmas Day, you're cursed to be a beast or a werewolf. And they go with that in this. It follows a little bit of him growing up and him having nightmares, and allude to him breaking out of his room at night and killing sheep. And then it goes on, it moves to where that goes away. The family tries to love him and care for him, and that he doesn't have the nightmares anymore. Then he becomes an adult and he moves away to start work. He starts to become the werewolf again and goes out and does some killing and all. And he meets a girl and blah, blah, blah. She's going to love him and going to help him, cure him being the werewolf, but that something goes awry and it doesn't happen, and tragedy, it ends with him getting shot by a silver bullet in this, fired by someone that loves him. So it's a little bit of folklore, a little bit of not folklore, a little bit of movie lore. But it's a beautiful, like I said, Hammer, you can't go wrong with the look of a Hammer film. They're beautifully shot, the colors are rich, and they're fun to watch. And everybody's got their favorite Hammer film. And granted, there's some that I don't really care for that to me are a little slow, a little boring. But overall, I'm a Hammer fan, more of a Universal fan. But I do love the Hammer films, and this one is in probably the top 3 of my favorite Hammer films. And if you haven't seen this, definitely check it out. It has just become available again. I mean, I don't know if it was ever out of print, but I just saw it recently. There's a box set I got a while back that has this and Curse of the Werewolf and not Captain Clegg, but Night Creatures, Paranoiac, and 3 or 4 other Hammer films. Anyway, it was available. I think I got it at Walmart a while back, and it was gone. Now it's back at Walmart, and I want to say it's under $20 or just over $20, but get out and get that if you get a chance. So run out to Walmart and grab that before it goes away again. It's a great box set. A lot of value for the money in that. And while you're there, totally not to do with werewolves, but they've also brought back out the Fly box set, which is the packaging is gorgeous on this. And it's got Fly, Return of the Fly, and Curse of the Fly, and also has an extra disc of just supplemental Vincent Price documentary material. I think biographies on there, maybe, and some other stuff that's just amazing. And this one, too, is right around $20, $25 maybe. It's beautiful. Gotta get it. It must be in your collection. Now, after Curse of the Werewolf, we get into the 60s now and going into the 70s. And you can't talk about werewolf movies in the 60s and 70s without talking about Paul Naschy. Love some Paul Naschy. Paul Naschy, for those that don't know, is often called the Spanish Lon Chaney. Paul Naschy was this guy who grew up as a young kid loving the Universal classic monster movies and wanted to make those himself when he got older, and he did, or he tried to, and became, Spain's pretty much top horror star, and made this series of films, these Hombre Lobo films, which are fantastic. And they're acquired taste. I'll admit that. They're definitely an acquired taste. And it's amazing because there were like 11 or 12 of these he made. Not a one has anything to do with the previous one. There's no continuity between them whatsoever, which is fantastic. And it can be kind of annoying, I guess, in a way. But if you go in knowing that, it's like every time he made a film, he just made a new werewolf film. Same character name. Waldemar Daninsky was his character's name. But that's the only similarity in every movie. I think one of them, it starts off where he's dead, and they talk about him being shot by silver bullets, and they take out the silver bullets at the beginning. And then the werewolf, he turns into the werewolf right there on the autopsy table and attacks him. That's about it, though. But these movies are incredible. The makeup is always a little different in each movie, which is kind of neat to see. You get a little different look, a little different take on it. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. But Naschy knows what his audience wants to see, and he loves his audience because you get gratuitous amounts of blood and you get gratuitous nudity. And, and of course, Naschy being the star of the film and most of the time the writer of the film, he always gets the girl in bed at some point. And of course he does, you know. Well, who wouldn't? If you wrote the film, wouldn't you? Come on. But these films are great. The first one, Mark of the Wolfman, La Marca del Hombre Lobo, was released in the U.S., actually Independent International, one of my favorite low-budget film companies of the 70s. And Sam Sherman got a hold of this film and released it as Frankenstein's Bloody Terror. Yeah, I think it was actually shot in 3D originally, too. Now, you ask, why was a werewolf film released called Frankenstein's Bloody Terror? Well, Independent International had a contract or distribution deal to release a movie called Blood of Frankenstein that didn't get made, but they already had the title out there and money changed hands and stuff to release this film. So they were searching around something that they could substitute and make do with, and they got a hold of this werewolf film that had a lot of action in it. I mean, it's got 2 vampires in it. It's got 2 werewolves that battle at the end. You know, and it's a weird Spanish horror film. So they had posters made up saying Frankenstein's Bloody Terror, and there's this, I'll try to put this on the Facebook page too, this if I can find this intro online. They did this little animated intro at the beginning with just the face of the Frankenstein monster, and it starts off saying something like the Frankenstein family known for being monster makers all these years, something, and they come down, somehow inherit the curse of the Wolfman and become the Wolfstein family. And the little graphic of the Frankenstein monster slowly changes into the Paul Naschy Wolfman makeup. It goes on for less than a minute, this little animation, this little intro, and that's it. That's all you get for why it's Frankenstein in the title of the movie. And the movie starts. It goes right in the movie. It's genius. It's beautiful. It's so cheesy, but so great at the same time. And, you know, hey, that's all you need. Just buckle up. We're going to watch a movie now. His other movies, like I said, varying degrees of quality. A couple of my favorites are Curse of the Devil, Werewolf Shadow, which have been released under numerous, all his movies have been released and re-released in the U.S. under a lot of different names, and in other countries under different names. These two, let's see, Werewolf versus the Vampire Woman, you may have seen one of them as, because I believe under that title and that release, it might be public domain. It may have been shown on a lot of different horror host shows. Fury of the Wolfman is another one that is not my favorite. It does reuse some footage from the first movie in it, so the werewolf makeup kind of changes throughout the film. The Beast and the Magic Sword is incredible. That one I don't think has ever been released in the States, but it may, I don't know if that's on the first box set or not. I'll have to check. There's 2 box sets of Paul Naschy films that have come out that have a couple of Hombre Lobo films. He did a lot of other films, a lot of other monster movies also, where he played Dracula and played Frankenstein and stuff. I'll have to look at, I got the second box set here for Christmas. Thanks, Tony. And let me backtrack a little bit because I'm getting ahead of myself going on a different tangent here. Which, if you've listened to this podcast before, you're used to that. The Beast and the Magic Sword, though, let me get back to that. That it was a co-production by the Spanish film industry and the Japanese film industry. And it's incredible because it's got Hombre Lobo, it's got ninjas, and it's got Hombre Lobo fighting a tiger. It's Paul Naschy, or a stuntman in werewolf makeup, wrestling around on the floor with a real tiger. Awesome. There's only one scene in movie history that's better than that. And you know what that is. It's in Fulci Zombie. Zombie versus Shark. I don't have words to tell you how great that scene is. That's a whole other podcast. But back to Hombre Lobo wrestling around with a tiger. It's a fun film. A lot going on in it. I need to see it. I've only seen bootleg copies of it, and I'm looking forward to getting a really good copy of it sometime one day. But the box sets that came out, I just watched the other night. Another one of my favorite Naschy films was released as Night of the Howling Beast, but the other title that's released as Werewolf versus Yeti says all you need to know. Yeah, the werewolf fights the Yeti It's incredible. Paul Naschy, once again, the man gets bit by a werewolf in the snow and wanders into this cave where these two girls are living in this cave, and turns out they're witches and cannibals and stuff. But before he finds that out, yeah, he goes to bed with both of them. Right on, Naschy. He's a man. But you get some great werewolf action in this. You get some great Naschy action in this. There's a scene where he's in this castle and fighting this guy. He does like the Jim Kirk double drop kick flying through the air. It's so much fun. I'm so glad this is out. I've only ever seen this on bootleg VHS before. So this DVD, or actually Blu-ray box set, is just beautiful. If you love Naschy or just curious, get both these box sets. They're on Amazon. Easy to get right now. And you'll just, sink yourself right in there. He made 12 films, but 11 of them are only ever seen the light of day. There's a 12th one that nobody can seem to find. I think it was a joint venture with, I don't know if it was a German film company, and something about they went under, and anyway, the film got lost. So I think Naschy said in an interview he remembers making it, but has never seen it himself. But the Hombre Lobo films definitely very important to werewolf film history, and a lot of damn fun. Now, we're into the 70s by this point. Of course, we can't talk about 70s werewolf films without talking about Werewolves on Wheels. Yes, I said Werewolves on Wheels. Man, you're talking early 70s here. 1971 to be specific. And somebody thought, well, let's see, biker films are real popular on the drive-in circuit. Horror pictures are real popular on the drive-in circuit. Satanic movies are coming up in popularity. Let's mash that all together and make Werewolves on Wheels. And damn if they didn't do it. You've got Stephen Oliver playing the leader of this biker gang. Bud from Father Knows Best is in this as one of the bikers. And Severin Darden, who will go on to be Battle of the Planet of the Apes, is the leader of the satanic cult. And this biker gang is, riding through the desert on the highway, and they stop and they come upon this satanic temple. And they're drinking and partying outside on the lawn, and the monks come out and give them wine and give them bread, and they've drugged the wine. The bikers all pass out and fall asleep, and they take one of the bikers' women and start performing the satanic ritual in the temple. The bikers all wake up, find out she's gone. They go in there and smash up the temple inside, take the girl away. But not before the monks curse the bikers. So yada, yada, yada. It goes on. And towards the end, we've finally, close to the end of the movie, we get to actually see a werewolf on wheels. Not till the very end we get to see it. But it's only for a few seconds, but it's an awesome shot. A werewolf riding a motorcycle. As far as werewolf movies go, though, you're not getting a lot of werewolf action in this. If you like grindhouse films, 70s, grindhouse films, drive-in movies, you need to see it. It is definitely from that era and one of those types of movies. But it's not really a great werewolf movie, but the poster is incredible. The title is great, and that one shot at the end is fantastic. Now, moving right along, going up to 1974, we get Amicus Films' only offering of diving into the werewolf genre with The Beast Must Die. This is what, I gotta say, this has become one of my favorite werewolf films, even though there's really not a werewolf in it to speak of. This is great. This Calvin Lockhart, this has got a pretty hefty cast in it too. Calvin Lockhart has got this incredible stage voice. Peter Cushing, Charles Gray, Dumbledore, who I can never remember that cat's name, but young, as a young man in this, and then a few other people. This is basically 10 Little Indians, where this big game hunter, Calvin Lockhart, invites a handful of his friends to his big estate for the weekend, and pretty much traps them all there, incapacitates their cars, because he knows one of them is a werewolf, and before the end of the weekend, he's going to find out who, so nobody can leave. And the movie goes on, and you never really see any werewolf. And when you do, it's just a big dog that extra fur has been added to try to make it like a wolf. That part's awful, but the movie is fun. It moves along at a pretty quick clip, and the best thing about this, though, is that right before the they expose the werewolf, the movie stops and goes to a still frame of like the wolf face, and a clock comes on the screen and says, "Do you know who the werewolf is? During the werewolf break, decide." This narration, and it shows pictures of each of the person. Is it this guy? Is it this guy? Is it And you have like 60 seconds to decide. It's great. It kind of goes back to the William Castle gimmicky stuff, and then it comes back to the movie, and they reveal the werewolf, and then there's another surprise right after that. So I would definitely recommend this. Not a Wolfman movie, not even really a great werewolf movie, but it's just a fun grindhouse-like 70s movie. And it technically it's a werewolf, so it's included in the list. Now, Legend of the Wolf Woman, 1976, I believe, is a Italian film. Not a great werewolf picture. It's in the list because it's the first, I think, female werewolf to come about. Except Werewolf on Wheels kind of has a female werewolf in it briefly at the end. But this one is in here because it starts off with the opening credits. This woman's performing some satanic ceremony, dancing around this fire naked in a circle of fire, and this kind of goes to the werewolf folklore about how to become a werewolf, making a pact with the devil, performing a ritual under moonlight, and all that stuff. And then they capture townsfolk capture and burn her at the stake like a witch. So that kind of goes into the folklore, and that whole part is shot really interestingly shot. There's one main shot. I'm not going to really get into it, but you'll know it when you see it. During the opening credits, that you just got to applaud the director for having the balls to make that choose that camera angle. I'm not sure if this movie it might be on YouTube. I don't know. I don't know if it's readily available on DVD anymore. But it's not a great werewolf picture. And that's the only part you get of the werewolf, really, is that opening scene. And the rest of the movie, it's a descendant of hers of that woman who is kind of going crazy and is kind of a serial killer and thinks she's a werewolf or just channels her ancestor. But she never becomes a werewolf at all. They don't really allude to it either. So it's kind of a misleading picture. Now, we didn't get another really werewolf movie of any note until 1981. And 1981 was a big year for werewolves. Well, werewolf movies anyway. Because that brought us The Howling, American Werewolf in London, and Wolfen, which I don't really consider Wolfen a werewolf picture, but some people do. But we're not even going to talk about that one because you got The Howling and American Werewolf in London. The Howling probably being my favorite of the two, the one I've watched more often. American Werewolf in London, it's a great picture, don't get me wrong. It's a fantastic film. It's a comedy, but it's not a slapstick. It's not a farce, but it is a comedy. John Landis directed a great film. David Naughton from the Dr. Pepper commercials, Griffin Dunn, Jenny Agutter, from Logan's Run. And everybody's seen this film. If you haven't, you need to. It's easily available on DVD, and it's a lot of fun. This, I believe, though, is the first time in film, modern film anyway, where we had the person changes into a full wolf, just a big hulking wolf, like werewolf folklore. And it's not a man-wolf walking on two legs or wolf man. It's just a big wolf. Fantastic film. Can't say enough good things about it. But it's not one of those I watch over and over again. Because like I said, I prefer the wolf man, the walking upright and the cool, the really cool makeup and everything. But this is a good film. If you've never seen it, and I can't say enough times, go see it. Find it, watch it with a bunch of friends. It's a lot of fun. I say it's a comedy because it is, but it's not laugh out loud comedy. There's not bits, shtick, or jokes or anything. But it's the comedy of the situation, the people, not believing the situation they're in, and some of the dialogue and the reactions to it, And again, it doesn't take silver bullets for this werewolf. Just takes one well-placed shot or a bunch of bullets. Now, The Howling came out the same year. And the interesting thing, the way these movies are connected, these two, is Landis wrote the script for American Werewolf in London, or at least the first draft, like in 1969, and was trying forever to get this movie made. And through one thing or another, he just couldn't get it done. He got his friend on board, makeup man Rick Baker. They worked together on Schlock. And he wanted to make this movie too, wanted to make a werewolf picture. And they just couldn't get it done, And The Howling came up, so he, went to make that. So Rick Baker was going to work on The Howling, do the makeup for it. And Landis called him right after he had started to work on it, pre-production and stuff, and said, hey, we got funding for American Werewolf in London. Let's make this movie. And Baker told him, hey, I've already started working on this other movie, The Howling. And Landis cursed him out over the phone and made him feel guilty, gave him a hard time. And he said, okay, I'll pass this on to my assistant, and I'll work on the movie we were going to work on. So he jumped ship and started on American Werewolf in London, which had incredible real effects, no CGI, on screen, in camera, werewolf transformation. Beautiful. And he handed over the special effects to The Howling to his protege or assistant, Rob Bottin, or Rob Bottin, depending on how you want to pronounce it, who also worked on The Thing, Carpenter's The Thing. Great makeup guy, great effects guy. The Howling werewolves this is the first time in werewolf films where we had the bipedal upright walking werewolf with the big wolf head and the legs like, wolf haunches and all. Beautiful looking werewolves for the time. Like I said, incredible. We'd never seen anything like it on film. And the transformations were really imaginative and inventive for the time. Really, it still look good today. Still amazing. And this, you talk about a cast, man. This says, Dee Wallace, or it was Dee Wallace Stone at the time, is the lead. Chris Stone is in this as her husband. Patrick McNee, John Carradine, Slim Pickens, Robert Picardo, a few other people. Roger Corman has a cameo in it. Forrest Ackerman has a cameo in it. This one's just got a lot of stuff in it, and most of the character names are werewolf film directors over the years. So that's a neat little nod and a wink and tribute to those guys. Now in this, the lore is a little different. They do get killed by silver bullets, but they can also change at will. It doesn't have to be a full moon. And this is also the first time in werewolf films where we've seen where the werewolves is not just one person that's cursed and creating all the carnage and all. The werewolves live together, exist as a pack. And it's really neat how that comes about. I'm not going to give away the whole plot, the story and all. This one's easy to see. Again, it's readily available on DVD. And definitely check it out. And the DVD, too, I believe, at least the one I've got, has a lot of documentary supplemental material on it that's really cool to see. Of the two, I prefer The Howling, but both of them are fantastic films. And like I said, really important because they kind of changed, was a turning point in werewolf movies where you could do something different, but still be faithful to the history and the lore and all. So much going on in both of these films, but differently. But still, they're both really cool. Now, after that, it was a few years before we got another werewolf film, or a werewolf in film that I can recall, or at least anyone that was, of any note. But Monster Squad came along in 1987, and man, that's a fun film. It's a kid's film, but it's fun. Adults love it. You remember it fondly if you saw it as a kid. It still holds up today as being a fun movie. And it's kind of a tribute to the Universal monsters, the classic monsters, where it's this group of kids who are monster fans, have a monster club, and they meet and talk about monsters all the time. And they're misfits or outcasts, like all of us were as monster kids. The leader of the group, his mom, buys this old leather diary at a yard sale down the street. That just happens to be Dr. Von Helsing's diary. And they find out they're just days away from pretty much the second coming of the monsters and the evil to take over the world. So they do what they can to try to stop that, and shenanigans ensue. The monsters in this are great. They're nice tributes, stylized versions of the Universal monsters. Duncan Rieger is a great Dracula. The Gill Man looks great. I'm not crazy about the head, the face as much, but the suit looks great. The Frankenstein is fantastic. The mummy looks good. The werewolf makeup is a cross between kind of like Lon Chaney and Oliver Reed. The guy plays Talbot character as a tortured soul, doesn't want to be a werewolf. When the brief time you see him. The werewolf makeup, the face looks a little weird, but Stan Winston did the makeup in this. He actually modeled the werewolf's face after his own face. And you can kind of see it when you really look at it good. But it's a great looking werewolf. And the immortal line, the classic quote that everybody does, Wolfman's got nards, comes from this. This is another one that I can't recommend enough. It's so much fun. And it's easily available. You can find it out there. Now, after that, I don't think in 1994, before we got another really, decent werewolf picture. And Wolf with Jack Nicholson comes out. And this one again changed the game again as far as how we see werewolves in film and what we could do with them. Because this goes into where he doesn't really change into a werewolf quite so much as he just gets wolf-like characteristics. As the film goes on, though, it gets more and more and more. He gets bitten by a wolf on the road. He finds hits it with his car in the snow, and he tries to get it off the road, and it kind of rears up, bites him, and takes off. And slowly he appears to be a little younger. His hair is darker. His bald spot fills in. His senses become more acute. And at night, I'm not sure if it's full moon in this one. God, it's been a while since I've seen this one. Or if it's just at night. He has nightmares that he's out on the hunt in the wild, and then sometimes he does go out, and he gets a little hair on the face, and gets his teeth get sharper, his claws, but it's not a full-on Wolfman makeup. It gets a little more intense towards the end, and James Spader's in it, and he gets bit too, and they have a little werewolf battle, which is kind of cool. Michelle Pfeiffer's in this, Christopher Plummer's in this. Well worth a watch if you haven't seen it, and if you like werewolf movies, definitely worth a watch. It doesn't go full-on wolf. At the very end, you don't see it so much, but he does turn into a full wolf, and you see the wolf, wandering away. It's a great film. It's not one of my all-time favorites. I can't remember the last time I watched it. But, if you haven't, definitely give it a look. After that, now, one of the ones that is one of my favorites, it's kind of a low-budget film, came in under the radar. I think it was out in theaters for a week or something. I missed it in theaters. But it's Bad Moon. Now, stay with me on this. Mariel Hemingway and Michael Pare. Okay, right there you're thinking direct-to-video, low-budget crap. It's not, though. It's a nice little werewolf story. The werewolf looks great in it. The makeup, the suit, incredible looking. More of kind of like a howling kind of werewolf, bipedal, wolf's head werewolf. And it's a tight little story. It takes place mainly in this backyard and in the woods behind Mariel Hemingway's house. And Pare is her brother, who comes back from overseas and where he got bit by a werewolf. And it starts off where he had been trying to find a cure, but over the course of the film, the werewolf starts taking over more of him as a man, and he becomes less concerned with finding a cure and more about, staking out his territory and being the wolf. This one is another one where it doesn't take a silver bullet or full moon to cause the change. He changes at night. Any moon will do, is what he says in that. It just takes a bunch of bullets, and the family dog actually saves the day. The dog's name is Thor, and the book that the story was taken from, called Thor, and from what I understand, is told through the eyes of the dog, which I'm interested in reading. I haven't been able to get a copy yet, and hopefully I'll find one, because I would like to see how the story through the dog's eyes goes. The movie's a lot of fun. It moves along at a pretty good clip. It's not really slow. I think it's relatively easy to find. I know it was not long ago, it was available at Walmart a while back probably on Amazon, you get it. It was on a 4-movie set on one disc that had Coma, which I don't know why that was paired with a werewolf movie, and a couple of other movies on it, but I got it just because it had Bad Moon on it. I highly recommend this one. Check this one out if you get a chance. It's a good werewolf movie. Now, after that, in 2000, Ginger Snaps came out, which is an interesting werewolf movie. I can't say it's one of my favorites. I mean, I don't dislike it, but it's not one I'm going to watch over and over again. It's about these two sisters who have a morbid sensibility and are outcast, and of course one of them gets bit by a werewolf, and it kind of goes like Wolf, where she slowly, over the course of the movie, starts to get more feral and more bestial-like acting in her everyday life. And at the very end, she turns into a big wolf, and it's horrible. The makeup, the effects are horrible for that. But it's an interesting little story, and it's worth seeing. But if I had to choose between this or Bad Moon, I'm going to watch Bad Moon. After that, 2002, we get Dog Soldiers, which is a really good werewolf movie. It starts off with this team of British commandos doing maneuvers in Scotland, and they're doing like war games, but they get this distress call over the walkie-talkie, and they go to find this other camp of the other commandos that are just torn apart, shredded, blood everywhere, and only one of them is alive, barely. So they think okay, it's real now, and they patch this guy, and they're trying to get out of there, and they see feel something stalking them, and this girl pulls up in this Jeep, and they all jump in her car, and they drive to the nearest farmhouse, which is miles and miles and miles and miles and miles away from anything else. And they're in the middle of this adventure now, and there's werewolves out in the woods around them. And I'm not going to go into all the detail about everything that happens in this because there's some cool surprises. The werewolves look really good in the quick glimpses you get, but when you see a still shot of them, and they're big, like howling like wolves, except they're taller, bigger, wolf heads on like kind of humanistic kind of bodies, but with werewolf, legs, the haunches, and they look fantastic. But when you see a still of them, it's like they didn't have enough money to put hair all over the suits. So it's mainly the hands and the heads, and then as it goes down in the body, there's not any hair really on the body parts, and that looks kind of weird in stills. But in the quick glimpses and the way it's kind of shot in the film, it looks pretty good. It's a good movie. We watched this not too long ago, and I definitely recommend seeing this one if you like werewolf movies. It's a really good one. It's easy to find. Dog Soldiers. Tell a friend. Now we go a few years later. 2006, not long at all, and we get Skinwalkers, which this one surprised me. I knew nothing about this film. I don't remember where I heard about it, but I managed to pick up a copy, and this is kind of neat. This goes, if you're familiar at all with the werewolf role-playing game, Werewolf Apocalypse, it kind of is more like that than any other werewolf movie I've ever seen, where the werewolves live in packs and communities, kind of pocket communities all over the place. And there's basically two factions. There's the faction of werewolves that don't want to be werewolves, that want to get rid of the curse. And there's a faction that relish it, and they're kind of like bikers, and they're, want to roam the land and be werewolves and embrace the beast and all this. There's also caretakers that take care of the werewolves. That watch out for them, like help them chain themselves up during the full moon and watch out so nobody comes after them and all that. It helps keep the secret. They're regular humans. Supposedly there's a prophecy that a child will be born, a hybrid child of human and wolf that has his blood can cure werewolves. And I don't understand why maybe I need to watch it again, but it's not like he's born and his blood will be used on one person to cure every werewolf. You have to go for the cure. You have to be injected with this serum to be cured. It's just choice. So I don't see why the ones that want to stay werewolves are, unless they're afraid that people are going to come after them and force them to take the cure, and why they want people who don't want to be werewolves to be werewolves. I don't know. But it's a cool movie. You got guys riding motorcycles, you got werewolves, and they all carry guns so they can defend themselves when they're not werewolves. And it's a fast-paced, nice little picture. Definitely recommend it. Skinwalkers. Check it out. It's a different werewolf movie, and the werewolf makeups are really good in this because it's going back to the kind of classic Wolfman look, where it's more, there's no big werewolf snouts. It's werewolf, hair and fangs and a little bit of werewolf like kind of nose makeup. Looks really good, really good. It's a lot of fun. Now that brings us up to 2016 with the Benicio del Toro remake of the original Wolfman. This movie is cool. You got two camps. You got people that love it, people that hate it. Personally, I think it's probably the best gothic horror film that Hollywood can make today. Del Toro himself, Benicio del Toro, is a huge classic monsters fan, and he really wanted to play Talbot in this, and he does an all right job. Sometimes his acting is a little uneven in a lot of things I've seen him in, but he's enjoyable to watch on screen, and he pulls this off pretty good. You got Anthony Hopkins in this, who is a fantastic actor, but sometimes in genre pictures too, like this, it's almost more so in Coppola's Dracula, I think. It's like he's acting in a different movie than everybody else is in, which, good or bad, whatever you think of it. But in this, his character as Talbot's father is quite a bit different than Claude Rains' character in the original film. But the werewolf makeup in this is fantastic. Rick Baker coming back to do another werewolf movie. Now, an interesting thing about this, Baker won the first ever Oscar Academy Award for special effects makeup for doing American Werewolf in London. He won his second Oscar for special effects makeup almost 30, 40 years later for The Wolfman, Benicio del Toro's werewolf makeup. So 2 Oscars for 2 werewolf makeups. It's kind of cool. It's all on set makeup, special effects, except the transitions. They did use some CGI for that. And I think that came down to when I was doing some research for the panels I had to do, that the main reason they used the CGI is just because time. The production was, they were running out of time, and they really wanted to release the picture by a certain time. So it would have taken extra days and, to do the transitions on set in camera, where they could just film the start, a couple of changes, and then the end, and then do the CGI to fill in the middle. Which, if you're going to use CGI in film, that's really kind of the way to do it, to use it to enhance, not to completely do the special effects. Because when that's done, it looks awful, and things look like just a cartoon, and it really, it just takes you out of the movie. But I enjoyed this. This was fun. I watched it again recently. It's pretty good. I still prefer the original, of course. Lon Chaney, how can you not? But this is a good film, and if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's bloodier, of course, than the original, and easily available, and the Wolfman just looks great. And it has a lot of nods and tributes to previous werewolf films in it. If you're a big werewolf geek, like I am, you'll spot some details and some little things that are tributes to the to other werewolf films. One thing I did not like about this, though, the werewolf cane in this, it just wasn't remarkable at all. I didn't like it had a lot of thought put into it. But you do get a double werewolf fight at the end, kind of like Paul Naschy films. So that's cool. Now, and I got to mention too, a little kind of an honorable mention, the movie Trick or Treat, which finally got released is back up a little bit in 2007 after numerous delays. It's an anthology film where all the stories are kind of are tied together. You find out as the movie goes on. Each story happens in different places, different people and all, but you see how they're all linked and tied together. Well, one of the first stories in it is a werewolf story, and it's really kind of cool. It's kind of a surprise that that's what it is, because you have no idea. You almost kind of think it's a group of girls who are trying to get dates to go to this party they're having out in the woods, and you kind of think maybe they're witches or something. And then you find out they're werewolves, and it's spoiler, and it's Anna Paquin from True Blood, and as kind of the lead in this, dressed in a Little Red Riding Hood costume for Halloween. It's probably one of my favorite Halloween movies this side of the original Halloween with John Carpenter. You have to watch it every year. And the little werewolf story is fantastic, but the rest of the movie is incredible too. Now, still talking about movies here real quick. I got my guiltiest pleasure ever werewolf film, and I'm not ashamed. It's this movie that we had heard about, and I'm like, okay, it sounded like a trauma film or something like that, and it was on Netflix. I'm like, okay, I gotta check it out. Wolf Cop. Yes, I said it. Wolf Cop. Sounds like it's gonna be an awful piece of crap, and I guess on the one hand it is, but it really was a lot more fun than it had any right to be. And we enjoyed the hell out of it. It was it's so bad, but it's not bad in as like other films are bad, like some trauma films, and some films are just inept. It was really a lot of fun. It's cheesy, but it wasn't badly made. The effects look good. The werewolf makeup looks good. And and when he becomes, the werewolf, he speaks. He's just feral and wolf-like, and drinks and tricks out his police cruiser to the wolf cop car, and and there's a sequel out that I'm dying to see, and the sequel's awesome because the poster of it, if I can speak, the poster is a parody of or takeoff on the Stallone Cobra poster, so that right there is reason enough to see it. So I'm dying to see the sequel. The first one, it's not on Netflix anymore. I'm not sure if you can get it on DVD. You probably can. But man, seek this one out, Wolf Cop. It is so much fun. You're either going to love it or hate it. But I hope you love it, because I do. It's a lot of fun, and I probably shouldn't love it, but I do. Now, there's one other movie that's not really a werewolf movie, but kind of is. And you're talking about, I could say this is a guilty pleasure, but I have no guilt over this. This is another movie that is funnier than it has any right to be. The title alone, low budget film, the title alone, FDR, American Badass. Barry Bostwick is the lead in this, playing FDR. And Come to find out, he gets bitten by a werewolf, and we all know that werewolves carry polio. And he gets bitten on the leg, and wherever the werewolf bites you is where you get the polio. So he got bitten on the leg, so he gets polio in his legs, and they find out doing the autopsy. They find a tattoo of a swastika, I think, on the werewolf, and in his pocket is the book Mein Kampf. So we all find out that werewolves are Nazis, and actually the whole Axis powers are Nazis. The Germans, the Italians, and the Japanese are all werewolves. The Axis powers are werewolves. Yes, they are. And FDR in his wheelchair, along with Dougie Mack, Douglas MacArthur to you, and they fight the werewolves and defeat the Axis powers. And it's amazing. It is such an over-the-top film. Like I said again, funnier than it has a right to be. There's stuff they will hit you with, and that it will just knock you sideways laughing. Or you'll just hate it. I mean, either way. It's really over-the-top raunchy, a lot of the humor. Definitely not, don't watch it with the kids. It's very R-rated, but it's so much fun. So much fun. I can't say enough good things about it. And like I said, I should feel guilty, but I don't, because it's that much fun. Now, not only were werewolves all over movies, but when I was a kid, in the 70s and 80s, they were all over Saturday morning cartoons, too. I mean, Scooby-Doo had a couple of different werewolves in different episodes. Iconic look, great. Everybody remembers those. But as you go on into the 70s, then you had Fangface, which a lot of, you remember that. A lot of people do. Before that, the Groovy Ghoulies. Man, Wolfie on the Groovy Ghoulies. Who doesn't love that? He had his wolf car and played the drums, and fantastic. The Drac Pack was another one, which was the young Dracula Jr. and Frankenstein and the Howler. And they went around righting wrongs and finding other monsters and solving crimes, and like you do in Saturday morning cartoons. Then live action, we had, the Monster Squad, the original Monster Squad, the live action Saturday morning cartoon. They had Frankenstein, Dracula, and the Wolfman, and Gopher from Love Boat fighting crime. And they had the Monster Squad van before the A-Team van, which was awesome. It was black with red highlights and had skulls on the side. And that's on DVD. You can get that, the entire series of that on DVD. It's goofy kids, live-action kids show, Saturday morning fun. Also, the Ghostbusters, the live-action show with Forrest Tucker, Larry Storch, and Bob Burns as Tracy the gorilla, had an episode with a werewolf on it. And I think Lenny Weintraub, who was, the voice of a lot of Saturday morning cartoon stuff. I believe he was the voice of Puffin stuff also. And Jabberjaw and stuff like that. Magic Mongo, he was in that. The Croft Show. But werewolves were all over Saturday morning cartoons. Later on, they even did, I think, a Teen Wolf cartoon, which, less said about that, the better. So, kids loved werewolves too. Pop culture, man, it was countless Halloween costumes from the 60s through now of, werewolf costumes, Wolfman costumes, toys, action figures, model kits, comic books. I'll try to put pictures of some of this stuff up on the Facebook page too. Countless werewolf merchandise over the years and ads and everything. Everybody loves werewolves, but it seems like vampires get more love in media and stuff, and to hell with that. I'll stick with my werewolves. I think that about does it for this one. I could ramble on and on about werewolves all night long, and, then it would just be me here. So we're just going to let it go at this, and check the Facebook page. I'm going to post a lot of pictures of werewolf movies and a lot of this pop culture stuff. Drop us a line on the Facebook page if you have anything to add, if I missed anything. Maybe I left out one of your favorite werewolf movies, which it's entirely possible I did, because, everybody's got a different opinion, and yours is wrong. No, I'm just kidding. But drop us a line there on the Facebook page or at the Fantasmo After Dark email. That's phantasmoad@gmail.com. All one word, phantasmode@gmail.com. And we hope to hear from you. And I hope you enjoyed this one. Me just rambling on about werewolves. Like I said, one of my favorite subjects, my favorite monsters of the classic monsters. Hell, I collect werewolf stuff. Maybe I'll post some pictures of my collection too on there. We'll see. But anyway, so that's it for this time. Till next time, everybody. Thanks for listening. Good night.